When it comes to building a muscular chest, what is the better exercise, the bench press or push-ups? Now you might think it's total BS even having this conversation, as the answer is obvious. But it isn't as black and white as you might think. To properly answer this, we need to set aside preconceived ideas about the push-up. With the bench press, it's easy to see how we progressively overload it, which is a fundamental to muscle growth. We simply add weight once we've reached the upper end of our target rep range. We'll look at 2 ways to progressively overload push-ups and a couple of studies that back up the effectiveness of each method. When it comes to cool factor, guys like to brag about how much they can bench, and it isn't unusual when somebody finds out you lift for them to ask. That being said, how cool would it be to rep out a few one-arm push-ups at a party? A little awkward bringing weights and a bench to show them your new PR. Which do you think would be more impressive to the ladies? Hearing about your new bench record, or seeing you rep out a few one-arm push-ups? Both these movements are compound exercises working the chest, triceps, and front delts. After that, there's some pretty substantial differences. Push-ups are a closed chain exercise where your hands are fixed against the ground. The bench press is an open chain exercise where your hands are not fixed in one place and move through space, making the push-up the more stable exercise. A couple of years ago, I injured my shoulder, and it hurt to bench. The pain came from stabilizing the weight as I pressed. So I switched to push-ups, and I could do them pain-free using a weighted backpack for resistance, keeping the repetitions slow and deliberate with a pause at the top and bottom to eliminate any momentum. This allowed me to continue to progress while my shoulder healed up. Now, was I really progressing? Or were the resisted push-ups just helping me maintain my muscle mass? To find out, let's look at a study where they used lifters who had at least 1 year of lifting experience, and they compared strength gains between bench press and push-ups. To make sure they were comparing the two as evenly as possible, they had them do the same volume, rest between sets, exercise tempo, and intensity. To match intensity, they had both groups training at their 6-rep max. To find this, they tested them at the beginning of the program for both their 1 and 6 repetition maximums on the bench press and resistant band push-ups. They'd increase either the thickness or the number of bands they were using until they could do no more than 6 reps. They did 5 sets with 4 minutes rest in between, 2 times a week for 5 weeks. The result being both groups had significant increases in strength. They tested the strength gains of all the participants on the bench press, and while the researchers said there was no significant difference between the two groups, the benchers did press more. This makes sense, as the guys doing push-ups hadn't benched for 5 weeks, and I'm sure they'd do better once they got used to the movement. If you're a guy who prefers to bench, this information isn't going to make you switch to push-ups, but it does illustrate there are ways to keep your progress going when there isn't a gym available. Or there's another way we can use this information, and I'll go over that in a little bit. First, what if you don't have any resistance other than your body weight? I have a video on this channel where I do over 70 full range of motion push-ups without stopping. Once you can get over 30 push-ups, it gets hard to be able to build muscle. Great for endurance, not so much for muscle growth. They did another study comparing bench press to body weight push-up progressions. All participants were moderately experienced and could do at least 6 full range of motion push-ups with a 2-second cadence up and down. There were 10 progressions, with 4 being easier than a full range of motion push-up and 5 being more challenging. The most difficult was the one-arm push-up. They started at a progression that allowed them to do 3 sets of 6 repetitions, and once they could do 8 reps on all 3 sets, they'd move up to the next level. If they were doing a single arm progression, they'd do 3 sets of 3 reps on each arm, and move to the next progression once they could do 4 reps on all sets. In this study, they trained 3 times a week, and after 4 weeks, those using bodyweight progressions gained a similar amount of strength to the bench press group. It's important to point out here, while these repetition ranges were good for building strength, they're on the low side to build muscle, so it would make sense to stay at an easier progression until you could do at least 12 repetitions. These studies show we can build strength and, as an extension of this, muscle with push-ups. Still, I think the bench press has the edge because of the simplicity of adding another rep or weight for progressive overload. That doesn't mean I'd exclude push-ups from my training. A great way to use them is as a drop set after benching. As soon as you finish your last set, go straight to the floor and rep out push-ups to failure. Rest a minute and then do it again, Because they're a closed chain exercise, they're safer to bring to total failure, and you don't need a spotter to help you rack the bar. Another thing that's helped me build my chest and keeps me motivated in all areas of training is goal setting. To find out how I set achievable long and short-term goals to build a better chest, watch this video next and keep working out while having fun. This is Lawrence from Fit and 50. We'll talk to you again in the next one.